Okay, ready for our next talk? Let's do this. I want to introduce Andrew Gremlich. Andrew is an experienced full-stack software engineer with a strong focus on writing clean, maintainable code, who takes pride in ensuring his code is understandable and effective, which means fully grasping its purpose and functionality. Andrew currently helps organize Utah JS Lehigh meetups. Big thanks to Andrew for that. He writes occasionally on his development blog and a life blog, learns various different web technologies from WebAssembly to IaaS, infrastructure as a service, like AWS CDK, and in his study, looks to deepen his understanding of computer science principles. Andrew's talk is titled AI-Powered Freelance Development, Slicing Through Challenges with Education and Tenacity. Please welcome Andrew Gremlich.
Hi. Thank you very much. Let me make sure this is good. There we go. And then I'll send my presentation there. I do have one quick setup with my little clicker thing. I guess I should have done this right a second ago. Okay. And then perfect. Great. Thank you for coming to my presentation. Don't mind me, I'm going to make sure to put up some notes and then make sure this still works. Okay, yeah, thanks for coming to my presentation. I'm really excited to present what I have to you. I've been really working hard on the style of this presentation to make sure there's a good story that's brought across, and I hope that you guys find it entertaining and insightful. And so for the content of my presentation, I want to encourage you guys to not be discouraged with the rise of AI software, AI technology, as Corey was talking about just a second ago. My talk is largely going to build off of his. And then in particular, I'm going to tell you guys a story when I was with my first freelance project. And I want to be able to encourage you guys to use AI technology in order to enable yourselves if you ever decide to do a freelance career. And I would actually highly recommend that you guys do that because there's one of the use cases that I'm finding as I'm doing a freelance career where I have AI assist me what I'm doing. It's been really beneficial. And then in particular, I want to encourage the freelance aspect part because as we've all seen previously with how much pressure there is to try to find a job, just do something yourself. There's a quote from the EPIC conference, it's like you could just do things. And so that I think is very apt here. When I've been working as a freelance engineer, I did find that AI technology did honestly help me, but I also found that it did inhibit me. And I want to explain how I came across that. Specifically, with the theme of the conference, I want to show how I learned a problem and how to solve it before using AI. And then once I knew the problem I needed to solve, I needed to leverage AI technology in order to get the problem solved. But as well, I wanted to master the problem so that AI doesn't master what I'm doing. I hope you find this presentation to be great and memorable. So, we are in a movie theater. I've never been, so let me see if I get this straight, go back to my notes. I hope this presentation is memorable and iconic. And speaking of having something be memorable, we're in a movie theater, and oftentimes people come to a movie premiere dressed up for that presentation. So I remember Megaplex just had a marathon for The Lord of the Rings, and people came dressed up. I've never had that opportunity, so I hope you guys don't mind. I would like to do that now. I've got a hat. And a wizard cloak. And you guys might be able to notice I've also themed my talk very wizard-like. Okay. And being a wizard, I needed a magic instrument. I have this magic instrument to help me. And there needs to be some magic in the presentation. So I hope this is going to work. Great. This is going to be awesome. I'm excited to go with this. So, okay, I have this magic orb with me. I have programmed this magic orb to the timing of box breathing. Let me explain meditation a bit. So meditation, or box breathing, it's a form of meditation where there's 4 steps to it that are 4 seconds long. There's the inhale, the hold, the exhale, and the hold. Why am I mentioning meditation and box breathing? It's a way to manage stress. Everyone knows stress. We're all familiar with stress because AI technology is so prevalent nowadays. And then not only just that, with family stress, there's all kinds of stress. And so with meditation, I want to explain why, or hopefully give a reason why everyone should be practicing a form of meditation. There's so many different forms of meditation, and you can honestly look into more different kinds of meditations later that you would probably more enjoy. For the presentation purposes, I'm having box meditation. If you guys don't mind, I would like everyone to meditate with me to this orb that I programmed. I do have a timer up here, and so it'll be great. So there is holding, and then as it inhales, go ahead and just meditate with the orb. Thank you. Hopefully that was able to show how much you control your breathing could actually help a little bit, and I'll explain that in a moment. Since you guys followed my orb, you guys are now under my spell. Just kidding. So the reason why I would encourage meditation, or breathing meditation in particular, is because of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system is highly correlated with stress, and the usual signs of the sympathetic nervous system is an elevated heart rate and a very kind of slow breath rate. For example, one of the reasons why I had this was because I knew I was probably going to be a little bit stressed right now, so I was like, okay, I try to do a meditation mid-presentation. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system, that is highly associated with slow breath rate and a slow heart rate. And so that's where the breathing comes in, is where you could deliberately control your breath rate. Then you could trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, where you could try to encourage a rest period and then manage the stress a little bit more. Okay. So this is story time. About 2 years ago, I went off to Washington to visit some in-laws, and it was a really good visit. One of the in-laws I visited with my wife was my Aunt Barbara and Steve? I think I forgot his name. That's embarrassing. As part of that conversation, Barbara just all of a sudden asked me, like, oh, hey, do you know anything about desktop software in 3D animation? And this was a little bit surprising to me because Barbara was this hick living out in the middle of the countryside of Washington. So I'm like, kind of? I know some frameworks. I was thinking about electronics. So I was like, I know a little bit, but like, I can learn quick. Like, that's kind of what you have to do as a software engineer. You have to be able to learn quick. And so Barbara explained to me that she had a friend that had a barber that also had a friend, and that friend was looking for a computer programmer to help with the project that he was working on. Side note, in my experience, that is completely how networking functions. It is rarely the first person you know. It is the second contact or the third contact, or in this case, it's the fourth contact where networking will actually provide an opportunity. And so, again, a little shout out to the conference here. Make sure to get networking. And so Barbara, back to my story, Barbara asked if she could share her contact info with me, or share my contact info with this friend, and I said sure. And it turned out a little while later, this friend did contact me and ask me the same question that Barbara asked me, the friend whose name is David. David asked, oh, hey, do you know desktop software and 3D animation technology? And I was like, whoa, 3D animation. And I said the same thing to him as I did to Barbara. I don't know much, but I could learn quickly. And he was a little disappointed with that because he had to kind of work with the technology that he had at the time because he had current software engineers, and they weren't really giving much for him. As it turned out, a year later, he actually contacted me again, and he said, oh, hey, so the last software engineer didn't really do a good job, so I'm going to contact you again, and I was wondering if you wanted to be able to do a web version with me. And I was excited. I thought, oh, great, I get to work on a freelance project, and something that I didn't really know about. And so as I was doing this, and in retrospect, I was a little bit too excited for the realism that I had. Or I was a little bit too excited for my realism because as I learned eventually, when it comes to freelancing, you should probably do something that you're very familiar with in order to try to facilitate a faster work environment. But luckily for me, I had AI technology to help me. David, he explained the project. He wanted a CAD type application where one could import an STL file, process the STL file, and then slice the STL file in a certain way in order to print it out in a custom 3D printer. The project in particular was to 3D print prosthetics for an amputee, because in that industry, getting a prosthetic for an amputee takes a really long time, and so this is an attempt to try to shortcut that approach. Right, as I explained before, I was kind of in over my head, and there was a lot of problems. Oh, I need to change the slide. There we go. I was a little bit over my head because I didn't know what I needed to know. My client, David, talked about slicers, and so I thought, okay, I should probably know what a slicer is. I don't know what a slicer is. And so I dove into 3D printing some more, and then I started learning these terms a little bit. And so what I learned about a slicer, it's essentially an algorithm or a method to dice up an STL file in order to make it 3D printable, because a 3D printer only has like essentially one direction. In particular, in the example with the 3D printer, it is going to have one direction because it's going to roll around until it prints out a prosthetic socket. So once I learned about the slicing and how to do that on an STL model, I thought, okay, I'm going to use ChatGPT to help me out here. I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, take an STL file, generate a function for me where you could take an STL file and then slice it up. And as I did that, it turned out that it was very largely ineffective because, make sure I remember these points here, because when I told the AI to use the STL file, it was using every single data point in the STL file. And because of that, the G-code that I was generating would be way too big, and the height differences wasn't customizable because I needed this to be printed in vase mode, and like the height differences of the STL points are very minute and very small, whereas I needed to be able to adjust those height differences in the 3D printer. And so I told David that once I realized the errors of the slicer, I needed to redo the slicer because it's like, hey, this isn't going to work, and I wanted to make sure to have credible reputation in this freelance job. He did give me some pushback, but I kind of kept to it. I was like, hey, this isn't going to work for you. I've got to like redo this, and he let me do it. And so I taught myself some more 3D animation principles, and eventually came to a raycaster. It was really cool. So a raycaster is very helpful to calculate the intersections of a ray with a 3D object in a certain space. As it turned out, this was exactly what I needed as I looked into it more. I would have the origin of the raycaster in the center of the socket, and then I would rotate the direction of the raycaster and gradually elevate the raycaster on a certain path, depending on the user parameters, and then that would slice this function, and then or slice this model, and then I could subsequently output it to a G-code file. As it turned out, this was exactly what I needed. It was pretty much simple. It was great. And I'm glad it wasn't really overly complicated or overly simplified, and the method that I put in there actually worked. Now, this is an AI-based talk. I will say that AI assisted me, very deliberate use of words there, AI assisted me to generate this function. And with this lesson, I learned the first lesson, I learned that I needed to actually understand the problem that I was given and maybe like properly word the document or word the prompt a bit more, and then that's where AI could actually give me something that I could work with. It didn't give me everything, it gave me something that I could work with, and then I could iterate on it. This wasn't the only problem I had. I also found GitHub Actions. So in one part of the project, I needed to send, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The project I built out of Vite, and then I needed to build the web application. Per the user requirements, I needed to send this web application to a DigitalOcean droplet. I found out that as I was trying to send the Vite application to the DigitalOcean droplet and then have the DigitalOcean droplet build the application, the droplet just wouldn't work. It kind of crashed on me. It turned out that Vite actually requires a little bit more power than the minimum capacity amount that DigitalOcean provides. But I didn't want to pay for more, a higher capacity droplet. And so I discovered GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions provides a really good capacity amount in order to build a Vite project. And then I planned like, oh, hey, once I build it, and then I could send it off to DigitalOcean. As it turned out, I also used AI again to generate for me a GitHub Actions file, and it just wasn't working. I had to teach myself how to work with GitHub Actions. And the more I dove into it, the more I actually went line by line this GitHub Actions file and taught myself how to use GitHub Actions, the more I realized, oh, here's what I could actually do. I could build the project in GitHub Actions, SCP the project over to DigitalOcean, and then SSH unzip the project in the DigitalOcean droplet that has been pre-configured with Nginx in order to be exposed to the internet. Again, what I found with that example is I was trying to shortcut the work using AI technology, and that was detrimental to the progress of this project. Yeah, so now time for leveraging. I have this wizard here trying to leverage a door. Make sure I review my notes really quick. Yeah, so once I taught myself how to solve the problem adequately, then I knew the approach that I needed to take, and that's where AI could come in to help speed up the process a little bit. Not do all the work, but speed up the process. And I do have some rationale, some reasoning for what I'm saying here, and a lot of this mirrors what Corey was speaking about previously. I found several studies, and these studies would indicate that what needs to be done is, hey, you got to actually put the work in. And then as you're putting the work in, you could use AI technology to assist you as you're working. One study from MIT, Corey briefly mentioned this last time. One study from MIT gathered three groups of students. One group could use ChatGPT, one group could use a search engine, and then the other group only used their brain. And then they wrote a time-constrained essay using those parameters for the group. Once the essay was written, they were allowed to review the work that they did, but they couldn't do what they originally did in the first session. So the group that used ChatGPT couldn't use ChatGPT. The group that only used their brain could use ChatGPT. What the study found was those people that used ChatGPT first in this time constraint showed poor memory recall. It showed poor brain activation as they were writing this essay. Whereas the people that only used their brain but reviewed their work with AI showed higher engagement with the content that they make. What does this mean for computer programmers? I think what this means is, once again, what I learned from my lesson is to not let AI do all the work, especially in a time-constrained environment. You got to actually put the work in. And then, especially also considering that all the investment that I could put in into the work would be something that I could own, and then I would have better health benefit, brain benefit because of it. In a different podcast, there were some experts in the psychology field. They expressed worry that people were giving AI too much to do, and their worry was that brains would start to atrophy and to start induce dementia because we're not problem solving a ton. And I actually am seeing that my time is wrapping up really quick. And so in these other studies that I found, one study I found, the study took a group of workers and found them that they were initially productive. In the long term, a worker would lose interest for the exact same reasons previously stated in the last study, is that, oh, hey, yeah, the initial output that you could give is great, but if you're not engaged with the content, you start to lose interest and things start to kind of dwindle. And like, we want to work so that we can actually solve problems, and if we're not solving the problems, then why are we working? And in a different study found that the people that benefited most from AI, from an AI-based workflow, were people that were new at a job, either new hires or like junior developers. That, I think, is a really good use case, because if the company, or I guess a freelance job as well, has specific context that's already given, then a developer could come up to speed a lot faster, which I think would be very beneficial for a lot of cases, because I guess as a personal example at WGU, there's a lot of wiki articles, and it's really hard to find the right answer. Maybe that would be actually more detrimental to an AI because it would be feeding off of that context of the wrong information. It's a big work in progress that you're going to have to try to wrap up. And then another study found the same thing, that junior developers tend to benefit better from AI. And then yet another study found that AI actually slowed developers down, because when the developers were working in a large and complex code base, the AI actually made more problems because of the large complexity of the code base. And so what the developers had to do, they had to kind of leave the AI alone and then go through and fix what the AI was doing. And so once again, like, I'm wanting to try to make sure that this information is like nuanced as possible. Yes, AI could definitely be great, but there are definitely a lot of considerations to take here. That probably piques up your guys' attention a little bit. And so with mastering the AI technology, if I could give a definition for mastery of a technology, it would be consistent, diligent, hard work into what you're doing. As I learned in my freelance project, it was only by consistent, diligent, hard work into learning these principles that I could actually get something out for the client to see. And then I guess just to reiterate what all these AI studies were showing, it's like, hey, like, we're still yet discovering what AI could do. We may have more of a hint now since it's been out for like 4 or 5 years, but we're still discovering what it can do. And then, and then when AI tools are mastered, this point I want to make sure to drive heavily as well. There needs to be some creativity involved. This presentation, I am so grateful for this presentation, because I have actually found a lot more joy in this presentation because I was able to be creative in this presentation. And I want to emphasize that point because creativity is a human trait, and it's something that we all can enjoy. A lot of these aspects are AI assisted in this presentation, but the whole creativity aspect of bringing it all together, that was all me. And speaking of creativity, in a different podcast where Hassan Minhaj was interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson expressed skepticism that, hey, industries evolve over time, and what we need to do, we need to leverage AI technology in order to try to build something new. Because he quoted like the horse and buggy industry to the car industry. When the cars were invented, horse and buggy industry all disappeared, but the car industry went forward. And so that is a repeat example that we could see over the years. Now, I want to make sure to inspire you guys with this last note. To wrap it up too, my client knew I was a hiker, and once I produced all this final content for him, he said a quote that really landed with me. When you're hiking, those little steps may not seem like much, but they're exactly what get you to the top. And as a hiker, like, I know this to be true, I love going to mountain peaks and see the expansive vista of everything. But if I'm hiking something like Tanogas, it's going to take like 4 to 6 hours to get to the top, and it's just the little steps that provide a way to go. Thank you for listening. I hope this was a really good presentation. If you want to see a blog post about this, here's a QR code with the script that I wrote for this podcast, or not podcast, for this presentation. And as a send-off, I guess, wait, if anybody's interested, come talk to me if you want this as a send-off. Thank you.